Good evening, everybody. It's the Gary Neville podcast, which comes this Sunday evening under dark skies on the first day of winter from the Emirates Stadium, where Arsenal and Liverpool, Gary, have just played out a really high-quality game of football, have they not?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I didn't want to draw for obvious reasons. Always nice to have a winner, but I think at half-time, didn't we? We felt that Liverpool would come back into it. I felt in that 5 minutes before half-time, Arsenal were doing really well and needed to score, and they did. There was a lot of good attacking play. It was tough for the defenders, which it should be in these big matches. 4 outstanding wingers on view, if you think about it. And, you know, I wouldn't like to be a fullback out there today. You think of sort of Saka and Martinelli, Diaz and Salah, 4 of the best in the league. And I think they were in good form as well. It was Saka was fantastic in that first half.
So how did those fullbacks do? And Thomas Partey, as you pointed out early in the game, was the one who's not a natural fullback.
I think he's done probably Diaz, Gakpo are probably the ones that have struggled most in the game in open play. I think Partey can probably be really happy with his performance. I think Andy Robertson had his moments against Saka where he really struggled, obviously the first goal being the ultimate one, although I do think, can Van Dijk just sort of read that a little bit? He's a little bit static, he then doesn't sprint back. Trent Alexander-Arnold had a good battle with Martinelli, but it was, 50-50. It's tough. It reminded me of playing again in these types of games where it's almost in some ways you can't go through it without making mistakes, without being beaten. You just know that you're playing in such quality a player. And you want support. You want support from your right centre-back if you're a right-back, and you want support from your right wing, your right-side midfield player, because the players are so good. And I thought it was tough for the full-backs today, but they all stuck at it. I thought Saka in particular, he's coming back. How important is he? I said during the game that a player that young wingers ordinarily, they make immature decisions. Their sort of selection, they cross it when they should pass it, they pass it when they should cross it, they shoot when they should pass it, and vice versa. I've never once looked at Saka and thought that he's a young player. I've always felt he plays the game like a senior player, like someone who's polished and at his peak. really... And he's tough, his strength. His goal was absolutely breathtaking. It made me give it it's just an absolute breathtaking goal. Straight pass over the top, but wonderful. And the wide players were really good. Overall, the game in itself, I think Arsenal can be really happy today. Because during the week, I didn't like the narrative of sort of like, they've got all these players missing. And I was hoping that sort of wasn't going to influence them subconsciously in the dressing room and the coaching staff. But he was really quite resolute yesterday, Mikel Arteta. No excuses. You cannot have a squad of 23 players spend the money that's been spent at any club, let alone this club, progress the way in which they have over the last couple of years, and have 3 or 4 players missing and say, we can't play. I listened to a manager for 20 years talk about having faith and trust in the squad, and he genuinely believed that, and he rotated regularly. Don't think Mikel Arteta's rotated as much in the last 12 months, but I think those players that have played today, that have come in, even Ben White, who's played a lot and going into centre-back, I think they'll have a little bit of a... that will have done a lot for Arsenal's squad in giving them confidence. Even Kivior coming on, I think, and doing okay at centre-back, I think, giving your players that are in the squad that are watching most of the time, that aren't playing week in and week out football in a big match, and seeing them come through it and compete really well with Liverpool, I think that'll do Arsenal's dressing room, and more importantly, the squad, quite a lot of good. And, it's a point's a fair result, and I think that Mikel Arteta will say he's proud of his players.
Yeah, and what about from a Liverpool point of view? On the face of it, you come to Arsenal, you get away with a draw. You're happy enough with that? Are they happy enough with that?
I think Arne Slot will have summarised the game as saying that he'll be disappointed in the first half, but he'll pay respect to Arsenal for the way in which they played. But what he'll say is that in the second half, it was like the tide sort of coming in, wasn't it? And we said at half-time, didn't we, that we thought that Liverpool would get a goal back. It was made easier, I think, when Gabriel went off, because that swung the momentum of the game even more in Liverpool's favour. And you just thought that there would be a moment where Liverpool would score, because they were just sort of, if you like, pushing the Arsenal defence deeper and deeper. And Arsenal were holding off and they were doing well, but you just had a feeling that it was going to come, and it did come. And I think Arne Slot he'll be happy with a draw overall. I think he'll want his players to have played better in the first half, but he'll recognise that this is a tough place to come.
And of course, out of it all, the guy who's rubbing his hands most is Pep, isn't he? Isn't that Manchester City's result?
Yeah, look, obviously Manchester City will drop points as well at some point in the season, and they'll have difficult games and they'll have these weekends. But this is a good one. Yeah, I agree. It's probably the result that you would have wanted. And look, City at this moment in time, clear favourites. They're ahead in the league where they would want to be. But there's a long way to go, and I don't sort of say this. I think this season's got something left in it, and I don't think City and Pep Guardiola will not think that either. But you're right, it's a good weekend for them. But I think also these two managers that leave here tonight will also feel like they've got very strong squads, and they can be proud of the start of the seasons in the sense of where they are and close to City, and just hang in there, stay on the shoulder. Arsenal. Last year, at times, there was an expectation towards the end that they could get over the line the year before. Obviously, there was as well. It might be that this time, if they're going to do it, that they have to come from behind a little bit, and maybe their form will come later in the season. Arsenal haven't started as perfectly in terms of form as you would, not playing anywhere near their best, but that's not a bad thing. I always used to worry about teams that started off like a house on fire. We very rarely did that. You know what I mean? You want to be hitting your sort of, if you like, full pace coming into February, March, April, May. That's where you really want to be strong. And so at this moment in time, Arsenal, I think, are in a decent position. They've had some challenges in the first part of the season with injuries and discipline. And if they can get through it and still remain intact, then it's not a bad place to be. And
it's only fair to say that Chelsea had a good result today as well against Newcastle. They're in that top 5 mix.
Yeah,
and they go to Old Trafford next week.
Yeah, I was in the truck. Watching the 2 o'clock kickoffs on the split screen. I had Chelsea and Newcastle there and West Ham and Manchester United on this screen, and you sort of end up not watching any when you're watching 2 games. So, yeah, I obviously saw the goals, and Cole Palmer, influential again. What a brilliant player. I mean, fantastic. And, yeah, the game next week will be interesting at Old Trafford, Chelsea versus Manchester United. But, yeah, Chelsea have had a good win and a decent start to the season, and not a great day for Newcastle. But I thought Chelsea... Something about it in that first game of the season, Peter. We did that game, didn't we, where they lost to City, and I thought, that's just something about this I quite like. I think this could work, and I put them in my top 4 the night after on Monday Night Football for my predictions, and at the time I'm not quite sure why that happened, but just there's something that I smelt that could be okay, and I thought they did well last week at Anfield as well, so it's been a decent start for Maresca.
Sure. And you're kidding no one, because of course you were watching Chelsea, but you were watching Manchester United, so we know where your eyes would stray towards. So you've seen things which actually a lot of people right now listening to this podcast as soon as it's published won't have seen.
Yeah.
Tell us about Manchester United and tell us about not just their performance but the events in the game.
Well, there are 3 things to talk about, I suppose, if you talk about where the position they are in the league, 14th after the game. But the 2 things in the game to talk about that I saw were the missed chances in the first half were unbelievable. I mean, absolutely incredible. Garnacho, I think, should have scored early on. Bruno Fernandes... was it Bruno Fernandes? There was a header. I think it was Bruno Fernandes had a header. Dalot had one where he went through on goal, and I'm not one for criticising right-backs, but I might have scored it myself. I may not have got there, but I probably would have scored it. And then there was a corner that got played in where I think it was Aguerd, the West Ham centre-half, heads it onto his own bar. How Manchester United have not gone in at half-time up in that game is awful. And I think that's only 8 goals they've scored now in 9 games. And it's just terrible. It really is. And I think only Southampton, when I looked at the table after the game, I think have got a worse record of scoring goals so far. So that tells you how bad the season has been for Manchester United in terms of in front of goal. And some of those misses in the first half. I was never one as a defender that came off the pitch at the end of a match and said, lads, you're a disgrace for missing those chances, because we always know these lads win your games, and often they did win your games, but it must be getting to a point whereby the defensive players in the team, the coaching staff, Ruud van Nistelrooy's on the bench, must be saying to the people in attacking areas that are missing, no, it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable to miss chances like that. Defenders get killed and goalkeepers when they make a mistake for a goal, but there comes a point whereby you're missing chances at the level that United did in that first half, where it harms you badly. And you can say, well, everyone misses a chance. It's the most difficult thing in the world to put the ball in the back of the net. But they should have put the ball in the back of the net a couple of times, and they should have been 2-0 up. Then you invite trouble, and they go 1-0 down. There's a goal where, I think De Ligt, Martinez and Dalot, all of them are not close enough. I think they give the ball away over the far side, I think, if I remember rightly. I was watching it on the little screen in the box, but I'm looking at it and I'm thinking... The ball doesn't get, I think it's Martinez maybe doesn't get close enough to stop somebody, and then De Ligt's not close enough, and then Dallot's at the back post left sort of floundering, and it's really poor. Then you're 1-0 down and you're chasing it, and then they get level through Casemiro, and then The second big talking point, other than the actual missed chances, is the penalty that West Ham get towards the end, which it's not right, that one. I mean, look, every team gets a bad decision, but that one definitely wasn't right for a couple of reasons. You've not seen it, have you? Where there's a ball that basically, De Ligt comes out, it's sort of like a loose ball with Danny Ings, it's sort of bobbling in the box, and they both sort of like go for it, and it's like a knee from sort of De Ligt that just makes contact with Ings, and it's a nothing really. The referee doesn't give a penalty on the pitch, David Coote, and then we're watching it, and he gets called over to the screen. Michael Oliver, I found out later, is on VAR, calls him over. But the interesting thing for me was when David Coote went over, he must have watched it. I might be exaggerating, but it felt like 8 times. And I'm screaming at the television in the Winnebago that we have, the little room. I mean, he doesn't think this is a penalty. He's not having this. But he turns round and gives it the old, and does, he overturns his original decision. And it wasn't right. And I think that the pressure maybe of being sent over to the screen by Michael Oliver, a dominant referee, no one likes to upset their superiors. You think of it when you're a young commentator and you see a senior commentator, or you think you're a young player in the dressing room and you have a senior player in the dressing room, or if you're young in the office and someone senior in the office makes a call and you think, I don't really want to tell them that they're wrong. And that I think it was a bit of that, because I'm not sure David Coote was anywhere near thinking that was a penalty. And it was a big shock. And in the end, Gerard Bowen steps up, takes the penalty. It's emphatic, and United lose the game. But they will point to, I'm sure Erik ten Hag will point towards the two things I've talked about. Really bad misses, unforgivable misses, and unacceptable misses. But then a really poor decision, I felt, at the end. He'll point towards that, I'm sure.
Well, we'll finish on the United-Chelsea next week. But before then, I think West Ham fans listening to this would want balance. And so... and they were under pressure too, by the way. Things hadn't been going that smoothly for them. So how were they today?
They were poor. I mean, in the first half when I watched the game, I thought they were really poor. I can't sit here. I mean, West Ham have won the game, so it's a great day for them, and the fans will be absolutely over the moon. But, and they've hung in there, and they've obviously... They thrive on the idea of Manchester United missing chances. It gives you more encouragement in the stadium. It gives you more encouragement on the pitch if you're a West Ham player. But I thought they were poor in the first half. I don't think I'm sitting here thinking that West Ham dominated United today. But they've got the win. And it's a great day for them, and they needed that. But I didn't think that they played particularly well. I thought it was more about Manchester United's lack of ruthlessness and clinical finishing, which is going to land at, he's asking for trouble, Erik ten Hag. I mean, I know we're not... Yeah. So he's asking for trouble. He's 14th in the league, 9 games in. And 9 games in is not like, I know it's the start of the season, but you're 25% of the season gone.
Well, half time next week, actually, is precisely 25% of the season.
Yeah, I mean...
So I mean, there's going to be a whole week of this. Next Sunday, Manchester United play Chelsea. Now, Chelsea have had a good weekend, not just because they won, but because Liverpool and Arsenal took points from each other. Villa didn't win. So in that little mix, 4, 5, 6 teams right at the top, Chelsea are beginning to be a quite substantial thing. They'll go to Old Trafford feeling good, and the Manchester United agenda kind of weighs heavy, doesn't it? It
does. Yeah, it does. It's be a big worry for... well, everybody in the club and the fans that are watching, because the performance levels, I mean, look, they should have been up today. So, but I thought West Ham were really poor, but United should have been 2-0 up. But they lost again. And they're 14th in the league. And they've spent a fortune. And I think you're asking for trouble. I was quite clear at sort of the end of last season that if they're in that same position again in the league, in the first few months of this season, there'll be lots of questions being asked. And I suspect internally there are lots of questions being asked, and this week's not going to be a great week. I mean, they've got a game in the Carabao Cup, obviously midweek, but it will all come down to next weekend against Chelsea, I think, in respect of, I always think that anybody that is half decent, that can play, will beat this United team. I just think anybody that's half decent that will play, that's got the sort of, put their shoulders up and got the quality, which Chelsea have got the quality in parts of the pitch. And they're in danger, and I don't think that there can be another defeat next Sunday at Old Trafford. I genuinely don't. I think that it's getting to that point now whereby there is a real worry. I'm worried because the results, the lack of goals, the lack of performances, it's stacking up week after week after week, and there will be some sort of reasons given today. I'm not going to say excuses, but reasons given around missing chances. But they keep missing chances. These are the players that have been recruited over the last couple of seasons mainly. And yeah, it's a sobering time, because the feeling was, after winning the FA Cup final and investing well, having a more smooth transfer window, that it's now looking like here we are again. That moment whereby it's going badly wrong.
Yeah, well, you've got a week to brace yourself for
I've
it,
not.
Gary. And so, well, they have. They have a week to brace themselves for it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been there at a football club. You know, I was for 8 seasons, up until I think 2.5 seasons ago. I was obviously the sort of guy in at Salford that made the decisions around sacking managers, and I've sacked managers. It's never easy. You've got to go with, you know, what the feeling is, where the players are at. And it's a horrible thing to have to do, and to be fair, that's why I never ever call for any managers to be sacked at Premier League level. It's part of my job, because I've had to do it in real time and in real life, and having to sack people just generally in life is not the place you want to be at. It's awful, because you're affecting someone's, you know, reputation, you're affecting someone's, you know, livelihood, and you don't want to be in that place, and you always have good intentions and want things to have gone well, but it's getting to that point whereby it'll become unbearable, the pressure in this next week or two around Eric Ten Hag, because just purely the position in the league, the 14th. Manchester United, I mean, I know it's Manchester United, and I feel like I'm repeating myself, you know, but you can't be 14th in the league. You can be after 1 or 2 games, maybe. You can't be after 9. You can't be after 10.
I know. Not too much to add, Gary, so maybe we'll leave it there and see you at Old Trafford next Sunday.
Yeah, and we'll try and get home from Arsenal. Thanks, Peter.
Cheers, Gary.